Welcome back to Durban. I've said that I think 7 times in the past week, as I've had the great privilege of introducing the daily COPpuccino, which has been brought to a variety of websites around the world by University of Cambridge and Nedbank, our main sponsors for this event. It's been great fun. It's been extremely hot in Durban. There's been this sort of paraphernalia and carnival of meetings, and what we've done is plucked people from their daily business in the COP, in the broad COP, and we've asked them about why they were here, what they've been trying to achieve, what their expectations were, who they've been talking to. We've asked them what their most significant moment was, and I think we've managed to gauge the temperature of COP17.
This is an agora. It's first of all a place where there's a lot of thinking and a lot of advertising and a lot of thought leadership. There's a lot of media and messages about climate change and putting climate change on the agenda.
I think the message in the corridors is nobody wants to see Kyoto Protocol die in Durban. Nobody wants to see that happen on African soil. And that is the consensus.
What is being done in the building there must ultimately have must have as its objective not just to get an agreement. That's the wrong objective. But to get an agreement that deals with the climate problem. That's the objective. So there's a part of me that goes, you know, so what about Kyoto and all these other elements? The point is, are we really progressing along the road towards an ultimate agreement that deals with the climate problem in a way that is scientifically based, and there's strong consensus, there's strong agreement, people will stick to that agreement?
I think in life we need leadership, and people look to the formality of agreements, which is why in the UN system you've got these endless negotiations. But unless you've got the formality of agreements, you're asking the private sector to commit resources to something that is completely unclear, because, you know, it's just in the nature of the beast. We know where we've been, we don't know where we're going to, and ensure that we can raise the quality of life of people is the big challenge.
It's been interesting, the kind of growing acceptance amongst developing countries that they too need to be part of a comprehensive, globally binding deal or agreement in the future. So that has shifted quite substantially from previous COPs, where you had the polarized view of the developed countries, of course, and they have to lead, historical responsibility, all of those issues at play. But in this COP, they've come into this COP, it seems, with a growing sense that developing countries would have to also take responsibility and consider taking those responsibilities in a legally binding way.
I think there are some profound questions now being asked about the very nature of risk and the very nature of long-term returns and where they're going to come from, given the crisis in the Eurozone, given the forecasts for growth or lack of growth in developed economies in the short to medium term. And I think the re-evaluation of the long-term potential of new developing markets.
I feel whether it's individual companies or governments moving ahead, they are both moving ahead often in the absence of this global agreement. So it's starting to become a money issue, that the reason that we should move ahead is because of the money, and ironically the reason that we refuse to move ahead is because of the money.
Yeah. I fully agree, and I think that we need to monetize the vision, unfortunately, because of the way in which we are struggling with the recession. We're forced to do so. But I think there's a way that we can create that vision by monetizing it.
So I think one of the things is actually there's no shortage of capital in the world. There's a lot of capital sitting on the lines, and I think people are willing to deploy it. But what we're looking for policymakers is some sort of what we call investment grade policy, so you can allocate capital with some degree of surety.
We don't have consistent reporting standards, and it's incredibly labor intensive to go through and actually understand what are people spending this climate finance money on, who's benefiting from it, and what does it mean at the end of the day for tons of greenhouse gas emissions reduced and for adaptation benefits and resilience enhancements delivered.
The scientific community is now seriously thinking of Plan B. You know, it's not obvious that the world will get Plan A right.
Is Plan A over 2%? What is?
Well, no, Plan A is let's mitigate the change and keep it below, you know, a 3-degree level or something like that. It's not clear that that will happen in time. Plan B is, what if we miss that target? What if we're heading for 6 degrees? Then what do we do? And that's where it gets really scary.
The real challenge is going to be dealing with growth and how we get to the stage when we grapple with the idea of calling quantitative economic growth to an end.
Our difficulty is if business cannot move as fast as our children's and grandchildren's interests tell us we need to move, then we have no ethical option but to keep also strong pressure on companies.
We looked at all aspects of how we do business, and it was really only when we started to pull them all together as one single good business journey that everybody in the organization and our supplier base upstream, which you call our supply chain, that everybody's eyes lit up, because everybody could do something that they felt passionate about. And I regret the most not pushing harder. You can do business in a different way.
Go and construct any index based on the sustainability of companies, and that index will outperform the market. You see it time after time. Nedbank's just recently done it and found the same thing, that the green companies are the ones making more money than the others. And that's coming to a point for governments as well.
I would love to see the United States and China and India and all the other countries sign an agreement and put $100 billion a year into protecting the climate, and start seeing groups of 6, 5, 7 nations coming together and setting up really functional networks, almost trading blocks, to work on red and on other issues. And I think that that's where we're headed. We're headed towards that kind of engagement.
We're all working very hard. Even in the worst of all cases, which won't happen, but even in the worst of all cases, even if Durban, says, oh man, no agreement on, I don't know, the Green Climate Fund or the Adaptation Committee or whatever, that does not mean that we have failed the next generation. We have to understand that this problem has been created over decades, and this problem is going to take, unfortunately, it's going to take years to solve. This is not, if this were easy, we would have solved it a long time ago. This is complex. This is very complex. But I have not heard a single government that says, it's too complex, we're walking away. None of them. They're saying it's complex, we're staying here, we are talking to each other, we're sometimes fighting with each other, absolutely. That's what it's all about. But nobody is walking away.